For the longest time, I just thought that my hair had a growth limit. It would always just grow to a certain point, usually shoulder length, and then it would just stop. And I tried literally everything. More treatments, more products, more steps in my routine, but literally nothing changed. It wasn't until I paid attention and did a little bit more research that I realized that it was physically impossible that my hair was not growing. It was just breaking off as fast as it was coming in. The number one thing that I hear from women in this community is that their hair is just not growing. And I get it because that's literally what it feels like, but it's so untrue. Your hair is most certainly growing. And in fact, hair grows on average about a half an inch a month. That's up to 6 inches per year. And most of us never see it, not because it's not growing, but because we're losing it. And today I want to show you exactly where it's going. So let's talk about what's happening at your scalp. Your hair grows from the root. And trust me, no matter what you do topically, your hair is growing. So growth isn't actually the problem. The problem is what's happening after it grows. Think of it like filling a bathtub with the drain open. The water is coming in, but it's draining just as fast. Because of that, the tub never fills up. Your hair is the exact same, growing in at the root, but breaking off at the ends. And the result is length that just stays the same. So if growth isn't the issue, then what's causing all of this breakage? I want to walk you through the 5 biggest culprits because I have been guilty of every single one of them. And fixing them can literally change the game in the growth that you see in your hair. So first is dryness. Natural hair is moisture dependent. When it's dry, it becomes brittle, and brittle hair snaps. And I know that every woman who is natural and has gone through this journey knows how important moisture is. But one of the things I constantly see women miss is learning their moisture cycle. And essentially what your moisture cycle is the exact period of time between when you first wash and style your hair and when your hair gets dry. So for example, if you notice that your hair usually gets dry on day 5 of a style, then you want to moisturize on day 4. You do not want to wait until day 5 when your hair is already feeling dry, because at that point, the damage has been done. You've got to stay ahead of your hair starting to feel dry. And to do that, you need to understand your moisture cycle. Once you learn what your moisture cycle is and start moisturizing before you ever get to that point, you will see such a huge difference in your length retention. It really is a game changer for those who are trying to keep their hair moisturized and healthy. The second biggest culprit of all of this are split ends that never get trimmed. So split ends don't stay at the end. Split ends actually travel up the hair shaft. And the more you wait, the more hair you eventually lose. And I know nobody wants to cut their hair while they're growing it because it seems counterproductive, right? But trimming your ends is not the enemy. Neglected ends are. So making sure that you're keeping up with getting your ends trimmed is going to make the biggest difference in your length retention overall. And you do not have to necessarily cut inches and inches of hair to achieve this. If you keep up with a regular cycle of maybe trimming or dusting your ends every 4 to 6 months, it will make a huge difference in how often you're seeing those split ends pop up and the length you're able to retain. Even now, I'm starting to realize that I need to cut myself. My ends are starting to get a little bit frayed, and I can see clearly that I have split ends that need to be trimmed. And I'm going to go ahead and trim my ends because I know long term that's going to keep my ends healthy. And also another point that really no one talks about is the fact that when your ends are split and your ends need a trim, your styles are going to start looking really bad. So I know sometimes when I need a trim that my twist styles will start to be frizzy and it won't look defined. And that's usually because my ends have started to split and it starts to look really frayed and really broken. And so that is another good opportunity for you to know when your ends need to be clipped. When I have freshly clipped ends, my twist outs are bomb. But when my ends are not so great, my twist outs look a little raggedy. So keeping up with those trims is going to make sure your styles hit every single time. The third one is going to be heat styling. And this is not about demonizing heat because obviously I still use heat occasionally. But consistent usage of heat over time weakens the hair shaft. And weakened strands break more easily. especially at the end of your hair where the hair is the oldest. So making sure that even when you do use heat, that you use it sparingly. So for example, when I flat iron my hair, I make sure that I don't re-flat iron it before I wash it again. So for me, that looks like using heatless curlers every night so that in the morning I have a curl to my hair. So that way I don't have to use a heat styler to actually get curls and bounce to my hair. And once my hair starts to get old, I just rewash it and redo it again. That's an easy way to cut down heat styling if you like to straighten your hair a lot or use stretch styles. Heat is not necessarily your arch enemy, but your hair will grow faster if you lay off the heat. And number 4 is going to be tension styles. So when I say tension styles, I'm talking tight braids, slick ponytails, basically all the styles that pull at your hairline. The edges are where a lot of women experience breakage first, and it usually boils down to the tension. Protective styles are only protective when there's no tension. So if you're constantly putting in braids that are super, super tight and are pulling at your hairline, or flicking back a ponytail to the point where you have a headache, that is not going to aid you in your hair growth journey. Even when you install added hair to your hair, so let's say, for example, you're going to put your hair into a protective style using added hair. If you have braids down in your butt and that hair is heavy, it's going to pull on your hair strands and it's going to damage your hair follicle. So you really need to be careful with the amount of hair you're adding, how much tension and how much weight you're putting on your hair, because that does have an impact on your scalp health and as a result, your length retention. But we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that in the next video. All right, and number 5. Over manipulation. And I know I sing this song all the time, but too much touching, too much product, too many steps in your routine are not doing you any favors. Every single time you manipulate your hair, you're creating an opportunity for breakage. And that doesn't mean that you never can style your hair, right? Obviously, I style my hair. But when you are having seasons of your life where you are constantly manipulating your hair or you're wearing your hair out a lot, you have to follow it up with seasons where you're giving your hair rest. Because rest and having your hair tucked away is actually the moments in time where you're going to see the most retention. I have a video all about this topic. I will link it here and I'll get off my soapbox, but rest is carry-all. Trust me. And y'all, I say this as a person who has committed all 5 of these wrongs at one point or another in my natural hair journey. I too went through a period of time where I felt like my hair was not growing. Like in my mind, I was doing every single thing right. I was deep conditioning. I was using 1,001 products. I had 1,000 steps in my routine. I was adding things to deep conditioners. I was doing the most. And I remember one day looking into the mirror and saying, like, my hair is not growing. Something must be wrong. At that point, I started looking at how much hair I was losing on wash days, which, I mean, it used to be a huge clump of hair. And I was seeing all of the breakage that I was inflicting on my hair. My ends looked awful. Even after I would get a haircut, my ends would be shot, maybe a couple weeks after. And so it really started to make me realize that I was the problem. I was breaking off my hair as much as it was growing in. But once I shifted my focus to length retention and started educating myself on how to protective style, everything changed. And it wasn't overnight, but over months and years. And I finally started to see the hair growth and the progress that I wanted to see. And that's the shift that I want for you. So if retention is the real game, what does that look like? For me, it came down to 4 things that I still believe in completely to this day. Again, first, that's moisture. Not moisturizing once your hair is dry, but moisturizing before it gets dry. Getting ahead of the dryness is the correct cycle. Second, clipping your ends. Again, even small trims can help with this. You just don't want to let the split end travel up your hair strand. Number 3, laying off the heat. Not forever, not never, but consciously. As you can see, I have been in a season where I've been straightening my hair for the last couple of months. And occasionally that type of heat usage is okay, but you do need to take breaks off and you do need to let your hair rest in between those periods so that your hair doesn't start to have damage, so that you can retain that length. It doesn't mean you can't do heat forever, but you do have to be conscious of how often you're using it. And 4th, protective styling. Done right, which is a whole conversation I'll go over in the next video, can take you leaps and bounds in your length retention journey. These are not complicated, y'all. These are not expensive, but they do require consistency over time. And that's the part that most of us skip. We always want the easy out, the product that fixes it fast. And trust me, I spent years looking for that product. Sadly, it does not exist. What exists is a simple routine done consistently over months and months and months. And that's actually why I'm going to be heading back into a protective styling season starting next week for 90 days. And I'm going to document everything. If you've ever felt like your hair just won't grow, I just want you to sit with this. It's probably growing. You're probably just not seeing that growth. And that's actually good news because retention is something you can absolutely work on. Let me know in the comments if this resonated, especially if the breakage point hit home for you, because I know it did for me when I finally figured out the key to my length retention issues. If you want to follow my 90-day protective season that I'm about to go into, make sure you're subscribed because that video is coming to you here in the next couple of weeks. And I also include a link below where you can sign up so that we can be in this 90-day growth journey together. And once you sign up, you'll get a free template to be able to track your progress over the 90 days. All right, I'll see you then. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.